Good afternoon or good morning, depending on your time zone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. First of all, my name is Andre Clark. I am with ERC. It's a pleasure to meet you guys. Just really quick housekeeping items here. So your mics are going to be muted and your cameras are going to be off during the presentation. You will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation. You could also submit text questions for our presenters by typing them into the Q&A that's in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. You could send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we will address them during the Q&A session following the end of today's presentation. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers, Casey Denby and Casey Hall. So Casey Denby, please take it over.
Thanks, Andre. Hey, everybody. Excited to be here with you today. Casey and Casey, we call this the Casey Show because we actually debuted this in wonderful Las Vegas late last year. And that was actually when I started my tenure here with Zenerate. So a little bit of me and my background. I'm a sales leader here at Zenerate. And prior to this, I've been a practitioner my whole career. I've been in operational leadership roles and training leadership roles at various different organizations, many of which are recognizable to those on the call. So I've worked for Dish Network, Comcast, Western Union, and Remax World Headquarters. And during my journey, I became global head of training for 2 different organizations, including the Western Union Company. And I was actually a client of Zenerate. I brought them in as a vendor to help solve some of the major glaring issues that we had as far as the learning journey of frontline agents. So I led quality assurance, knowledge management, LMS, video production, kind of everything training, and getting people ready for the floor. So I'm excited for today's conversation. We have a great partnership with ERC. So quick background on Zenerate. We're a human-centered AI software company, 100% focused on making the human being great. So we're AI for humans. And our AI coach is akin to a flight simulator. So we like to say that we're the conversation simulator, but we're the flight simulator for customer engagement, and we can simulate any human interaction that you can possibly imagine. So I'll turn it over to the lovely Casey Hall.
Thanks, Casey. Hi, everyone. My name's Casey Hall. I'm a Senior Director of Client Solutions here at ERC. So I get the opportunity to work with some of our tech partners to improve both the employee and the customer experience. For those of you less familiar with ERC, we are a global provider of outsourced customer engagement solutions, which means today really having to be good at 2 things, right? One, developing talent, and the second, of course, developing technology solutions. To stay ahead of customer expectations, you really can't invest in one without the other. And for us, we've always been a very tech-forward organization, and we vet technologies by asking ourselves the question, will this make it easier to work with us, whether you are a brand partner, a customer, or most importantly, an employee? So when partnering with Casey and Zenerate, from client's perspective, we were trying to find technologies that could help drive engagement, reduce attrition, and really help ERC build high-performing teams. So Casey, I don't know if you'd like to say a few words on the partnership so far, but we've seen some great results, and we've been together for about a year now.
Yeah, a little over a year. It's been quite a journey together, and we're happy to be in partnership. And one thing she didn't mention is we actually service multiple use cases for them. So they have a big recovery side of the house and also a big customer service side of the house. So we actually service both clients on both sides of the house. And I'm going to go ahead and transition it over to our moderator, Andre, to kick us off.
All right, thank you, Casey. So we have some questions to ask you, and you could impart your knowledge upon our audience here. So we're going to start with our first question up. How does AI conversation simulation address today's challenges with employee engagement? And this is for Casey Denby.
Let's set the table real quick. So employee engagement is the nature of the relationship between an organization and its employees. And when I think of my tenure now with multiple different large multinational organizations, the one factor that I've noticed both being on a team and both leading teams is that people crave, first and foremost, success. personal success. They want team success, they want company success, but they want to know that they're contributing to the organization. And so when we put the term employee engagement, what it really means is that employees have two things: confidence and high performance. And so where does AI conversation simulation come into this equation? The reality is the call center job is more difficult today than it was 5 years ago, and 10 years ago, and 15 years ago. And there's many reasons for that, but the long and short of it is there's a lot of automation in the industry today. But the automation isn't taking the easy stuff or the hard stuff out of the contact center job. It's taking the easy stuff away, right? The balance checks, the payment opportunities, right? Things that are really quick, short interactions with customers. And so agents, through conversation simulation, gain competence. And competence is what drives confidence. I know there's a lot of ints there, but the truth is you don't get there unless you get there through action. And the results of the confidence and competence equation is performance and productivity, which is what every organization wants, which is what every individual wants. I want to know that I'm contributing, really contributing to my organization. We love to introduce, we're following closely at Xenerate the 70-20-10 learning model. This is not a new model. It's been around for almost 30 years. And when you think about the 70-20-10 learning model, the reality is that 70% of what people learn or how they learn is through doing. It's not through PowerPoint by death, which I think we've all been through that type of a training before. We know it's not effective. The reality is I watched a lot of golf as a kid. You can probably see this golf picture, Sawgrass 17, right behind me. It didn't make me any better watching countless hours of Tiger Woods each Saturday and Sunday. What made me a decent golfer was getting out and practicing, going to the range, spending hours and hours there, getting a swing coach, getting tips and going and practicing, joining a team, getting into competitions, et cetera. And still to this day, I'm working on that golf swing, right? If you play the game, you know what that's all about. But the reality is no different for contact center agents. They need the reps. That's why we call it the flight simulator. Kind of they get in, they practice, and then they're ready to go. So one last stat I'll leave you with on this question is when you introduce a new topic to a learner and then you transition to a new topic and then a new topic and then a new topic, each time you do that, they're losing retention of that previous topic unless you have them practice what you just taught them. So think of it this way. I'm going to introduce something as a facilitator, and now you're going to go into the AI coaching flight simulator and you're going to practice. You know what happens to retention there? It actually jumps up to 75%. Pretty cool. So that's just learning statistics. It's not my statistic. That's out there in the business world today. So
yeah, but we can back that up too, being in the BPO industry, Casey. I think, ERC is unique in that almost 90% of our leaders started off as agents. So we all know what it's like to be in a training classroom and then to be thrown into nesting. And for the first time, trying to apply the knowledge you have essentially memorized, on practice with live calls, which is really what drives training attrition is the lack of preparation, the lack of hands-on experience in training, and then with the expectation that they can suddenly apply critical thinking skills and apply that knowledge without having had the experience of running through, for example, a simulated engagement scenario. And for us, I think one of the biggest challenges, especially today with some of the staffing shortages and to your point, automation, is, most voluntary attrition comes from a lack of agent confidence. So for us, we really prioritize the employee experience by making sure they're getting the hands-on experience. They have the opportunity to master that call flow before they're ever getting on a live call with a customer. It's not a great experience for anyone, our agents or the customer, if they're practicing on live calls during nesting. So no, I agree. And we've seen that time and time again in our programs.
All right, awesome. Well, our next question, where have you seen AI-powered coaching have the most impact?
I love this one. I'm going to keep it pretty simple. Confidence, which we've already addressed, and readiness, which Casey addressed really well. It's having people that are ready to hit the production floor but knowing what they're doing. There's one thing, and Casey, you even mentioned it, right? There's one thing in being able to pass a test on paper. It's a completely different thing to be able to perform what you know in person and in real life. So cool stat. Harvard Business Review did a survey last year, and 75% of consumers still prefer human interaction. So there's this race in the contact center world to automate everything, right? But people still want to talk to people. I can tell you this from personal experience. When I call somebody, a company, I am not trying to talk to a robot. It's because I can't self-serve, something's broken, something's wrong, I need help right away. Like, let's get in and talk to an agent. I'm the one that hits 0 1,000 times. Guilty, right? Because I'm not calling to go through 20 different options for something I know I can't self-serve on. Like, I need to talk to a customer service agent. And so I love this job, because each one of those touch points is an opportunity to make a positive impact. And Casey, I think you can attend to this. I know it's funny, the audience is hearing Casey. It's so great. But 90% of the people who call into a contact center say that this touch point reinforces brand loyalty for them if it's a good experience. If it's a bad experience, right? It kind of goes the other direction. But let's take that 90% number. That means every single interaction, every single one, is critical, not just like somewhat important. It's critical for brands. So where we come in from an impact perspective, and you can see this chart on the slide, we come in, again, giving people the practice that they need. And we really impact 2 particular use cases. New hire training, I think everybody probably guessed that. And then upskilling of tenured agents. So a couple of points on each. New hires, speed to proficiency is the most important metric, in my opinion, in the business. It proves that they're performing at a level of acceptable performance by the organization when they're engaging and doing their jobs with customers. So we impact that on average 56%. And this is Champion Challenger data that comes from our clients post AI coach implementation. We're above 30% on CSAT, on QA. We help lower operating expenses and attrition. The reason is simple. It's not because Zenerate is like a cool name and it's an awesome company, right? It's because when people get practice, they're better at their job. It's not rocket science, but you can't scale human to human role play. There's inconsistencies with human to human role play. And so we're really focused on giving people a consistent, scalable experience. And then again, on the new, on the tenured agent, learning doesn't stop when you're done training. Like, you hit the production floor, all of a sudden you don't need training anymore. That's not true. I mean, we all know how important coaching is. So we can identify and close skill gaps and do that through the simulator, right? They get in, they practice. And I'll give one example for you here. Imagine you're launching a new product or service at your organization. Instead of throwing a knowledge article out there and praying that the agent reads it, and usually they're going to read it, by the way, while they're talking to a customer, you can put them in the simulator for 4 days, for 10 minutes a day during downtime when they don't have any calls to take and they're sitting around kind of twiddling their thumbs. And boom, they're going to be ready to take that call in production because they have been there, they have done that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And having actually talked to our agents who've used the platform, they almost enjoy using it more in production, because for any upskilling, even when clients launch a new product or have a new promotion, they're sent back to a formal training setting and they're only given that time to really master the new concept. Whereas this is available 24/7 for them to log on and practice the workflow, practice that customer engagement scenario at any point. And you can imagine, you typically see a ratio of, 1 trainer to every 15 agents. And there's only so many role plays that they can facilitate, especially if you're going through an aggressive ramp period, or again, as I mentioned, launching a new product. You need flexible solutions. And so both from an agent's and a trainer's perspective, this really allows for more of a dynamic way to upskill. Aside from the benefits, of course, we've seen in training, and to Casey's point, I think, when we first launched this on our recovery business, which is a very hard call type where, there are so many disclosures that agents have to learn to read naturally. And it's, a lot of negotiation with the customer as well. We found that the speed to proficiency went up by about 70%. So.
That's even better than my experience. That's amazing, right? And again, we have this range of like 40 to 70%, no matter where you are today, that you're going to see that impact because practice makes better. That's just the long and the short of it. Love that example.
Absolutely. Our next question, how has the experience been valuable in a work from home environment? That's a question for Casey Hall.
Perfect. No, it's a great question. I think one we can all resonate with today, having, gone through the height of the pandemic where ERC's business personally, we had to transition over 70% of our workforce in a remote environment. And while we had a work at home platform, as you know, in the BPO industry, our clients dictate the training curriculum a lot of times, or, again, they have programs that were built for a brick and mortar center, and we were challenged with within 48 hours having to transition the business to a completely remote environment. So, I think few things that we helped our clients overcome, and I'll speak to what I consider the 4 pitfalls of trying to transition a training program from an in-center environment, again, to a virtual platform. But the first is that most curriculums today are still instructor-led. And so Casey hit on this earlier, but it's your traditional PowerPoint content where the trainer is speaking at you, not with you. And I think that's a struggle that we see because the remote environment, again, has less structure. It's easier to get distracted. It's harder because you don't have the same visual cues to track engagement. So you really need to create more collaborative sessions, whether that be role plays, teach backs, or open discussions. So that's one way that conversation simulation can come in and make, the session more collaborative. The second way, is, again, the common pitfall I see is that, attention spans are shorter. And I think before most of us went remote, we probably couldn't all resonate with this, and now we can, but no one wants to be on back-to-back Zoom meetings. What we can
8 hours of training
exactly.
in a single day for 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Yeah. And when we launched AI conversation simulation capabilities initially, it was on very regulated industries, whether that be collections or customer care for financial services clients, where the training could be 4 to 6 weeks long. The content has to be simplified. It has to be more digestible to really maximize engagement due to those shorter attention spans. And, thirdly, and I think this is something that I'll ask the group, but when are you more engaged on a road trip? When you're the driver or the passenger? And I think we can all say, it's when we're the driver, or we know where we are, we know where we're going, we're in control. And in a classroom setting, whether it is virtual or brick and mortar, it's very important to put the learner in the driver's seat. So giving them the ability to control the pace and the training outcomes. And through platforms like Zenerate, employees can log on, they can go through the workflows, they can revisit sections that they might still be struggling with, all at their own pace. But there's an accountability there. And when there's that accountability, when there's that sense of control, they have more invested in learning experience. So that's from an agent's perspective. But the last point I'll make is really from the trainer's perspective. And it's, again, you have less controls and checkpoints in place in a virtual environment. And so for a trainer, you don't have the same cues you would. You can't track engagement visually. How do you assess where your learners are at the end of each day? Because it's dangerous if you wait too long to identify knowledge gaps. It's hard to go back, especially when you have a set course that's lasting 4 to 6 weeks, again, to make sure you can go back and address problem areas. But with technologies, again, like Zenerate, the use of analytics is key when you don't have the same controls and checkpoints in place to understand where your top performers and bottom performers are at the end of each day or at the end of each week, to go back and make sure everyone's getting the attention and everyone's getting, the training that they need to identify where the gaps are and close that gap between your top and bottom performers.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. And I'll just add that 4 out of 5 organizations are adopting work from home in some capacity for their frontline associates or anybody, right? Even corporate environments. So when you think about this, the problem you're describing is not going away. The problem you're describing is being amplified. And now it is the new reality. How do we adjust to that? The reality is you have to do it through technology. You cannot scale in an organization that has hundreds, if not thousands, of call center agents in different locations, et cetera, unless you have a consistent, repeatable, scalable learning experience. And that's where the AI coach comes in. Is there's no bias in the AI coach. There's no personal opinions, right? You can scale this anywhere in the world. And Casey Hall even mentioned it. It's available 24/7. So the only thing I'll say is you get this wherever you are, whoever you are, the reps get this opportunity to master their best practices, soft skills, et cetera. And it kind of eliminates all the negatives of human to human role play. Even though that is an incredibly effective method of learning, there's some, inconsistencies and biases and opinions and feedback. If I were to do a role play with Andre versus Casey, it's going to be a different experience for me because they're different people, different opinions, et cetera, even though they know what the guidelines are for ERC, let's say.
Yep. Rule of thumb, I think, less than 40% of your content should be instructor led, and over 60% needs to be more engaging, whether that's conversation simulation, teach backs, gamification, you name it. But there has to be more engaging content than death by PowerPoint, as we say.
Yeah. So when I, started my role at Western Union, we could get on this one for a while, but we're going to go back to Andre for the next question. But the breakdown was 95% facilitator led. You're not going to learn. Our speed of proficiency was no bueno, right? And so what Casey said is true. I actually targeted 70-30. So I targeted but flipping it, right? So getting 70% of practice, role plays, e-learnings, and Zenerate kind of came in and helped fill the void of most of that 70%. We couldn't do it without tech. It just wasn't possible. So Andre, back to you, my friend.
No, it was an awesome discussion. Well, Casey Hall, what has been the overall response from trainers, coaches, and agents using the Zenerate technology?
Well, put simply, I think from a trainer's perspective, they think it's a game changer. They've been very intentional of trying to build this in to the training curriculum on a daily basis. So making sure when they introduce a concept, they're able to reinforce that concept through one of the stories or engagement scenarios that we've built out for agents. So they can go in and, on a daily basis, have practice running through that call flow. We might not start them on the end-to-end call flow, but as we go through sections of the call to drive to higher resolution rates, making sure as we're introducing concepts, we're using conversation simulation to reinforce them. So they love that because it really helps build muscle memory. So I think, that's typically the feedback we receive from trainers. We've also been trying to incorporate it into some of our certification programs. Again, we always do role plays as part of our certification process, but it's just not as good of a representation of what the agent will expect once in production. On a chat or on a call, you cannot see the customer. And so on a role play, especially if it's in person, you can still read facial cues. So the simulation, I think, works. I would not replace role plays, but it complements the role plays and really gives them a more realistic expectation of what that interaction is going to be like on a live call or a live chat. And then from our agent's perspective, as I think I mentioned, being able to really control the pace, having this available at any time, especially on the production floor, to go back and revisit parts of the call flow they're still struggling with, has, really improved agent confidence. And, we've seen that across the board. We've seen, as a result, attrition go down in the first 30 to 90 days as well. One thing I will mention, I think is important, is that the key to deploying this successfully and making sure it truly helps increase the speed to proficiency and reduce attrition is having your trainers and your quality analysts involved in building out these simulated scenarios. You want to make sure you're looking at the top 20% of the contact drivers that produce 80% of the results. And so that's key in making sure you're involving your SMEs as you build these out. And that's something that I think we've gained a lot of expertise around that we offer our clients when we partner with them is, again, making sure that we're taking some of the workload off of them and building these out to really target what we know is going to impact agent confidence and learning outcomes at the end of the day.
Yeah. If you don't know your business, how can you improve your business? Right. So well said. The only thing I'll add here is we see the highest NPS. Like if we were to do a net promoter score on Zenerate, the highest comes from the agents themselves, the people using the platform day in and day out. In fact, they clamor for more. I want more of this. Can we do less, facilitator time and more of this? This is what's helping me get better at my job and get prepared to hit the production floor, because that's what they're going to do in production. So pretty simple formula, but love the way that you explained that, Casey.
Awesome. Well, our next question is for Casey Denby. And how does AI-powered coaching leverage data to drive better decision-making and training outcomes?
I think brands in general, and the brands on this call, but all the brands that we talk to, they want to be 100% certain that when a frontline associate is ready to is taking live calls, that they're actually ready, that they're actually, Casey mentioned the word certified. Now, a lot of companies don't actually do a certification process because they're assuming the tests on paper make somebody a great call center agent. But that's just not the case. Just because I know something doesn't mean I can perform. Again, I've already mentioned this, but just reinforcing this because that is critical. So you're putting the learner in the driver's seat, giving them the opportunity to drive the car before they have to take the exam. And we have robust reporting and analytics from Zenerate, right? So Andre just put a simulation scorecard, we call it, onto the screen, but we can track every click and utterance that is conducted inside the platform and slice it and dice it any way that the client wants to see it. This is kind of a redacted general call type and let's say a training class that's going through, and you can compare each individual on this scorecard. And you can see the agent activity over on the left. You can see the compliance portion of the call. You can see the strategy portion. This is just each step of the call flow. And we can track at each step of the call flow how people are performing. And you can see handle time. You can see how whether or not they're getting interrupted. And I didn't mention that, but the AI coach, actually, if you don't follow best and required practices, it will interrupt you. And that best and required practices is what Casey Hall mentioned, is that's what you need to know your business. What's important to your brand? What's important to ERC and their clients? If you know that, it's very easy to be able to incorporate that within the training. And then the Zenerate team does the rest. We build it all and put it out there, and we get through all of the testing, and we make sure it works for each client. They're catered and customized for each client. So agent certification is critical. And this has everything to do with visibility. It gives people the understanding of how people are performing. It's one thing to think everybody's on track, but if a group of 15 people, the facilitator's remote, and they're asking, how is everybody doing? Are you keeping up with us? And 10 people say, yeah, we're good. The other 5 are going to be like, yeah, we're good too, right? Peer pressure. But it's better to know and see how they're doing from the beginning, not just at the very end when it's too late. They're ready to hit the production floor. So this is also a great way to screen people when they come into the company as well. Are they even going to be good at this job? Their job is to speak to customers day in and day out. So again, it's you can attack each specific point of the call. Let's say you see there's a lot of interruptions on one particular section. Maybe the training needs to be tweaked. Maybe it's not calibrated well, or maybe the individual just needs a little bit more coaching, or this person can now advance to the next call type. So there's so many different things that can be done here. But reporting and analytics is critical to be able to determine whether or not people are ready to hit the production floor.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also knowing how your trainers are performing, right? Making sure that we're also assessing our trainers. And to your point, Casey, we're not waiting until production to do a calibration with QA to identify what those gaps are and have to retroactively address them. Again, being proactive is something that our partners really value, and having these analytics and being able to track performance, again, on a daily, weekly basis is key. So
I love it. And we are keeping this short, by the way. We're not going to go the full hour. We have one question left. The point is to be able to open it up for Q&A. So Andre, cue up the last question.
All right. Well, the question is for you, sir. And where do you see AI-powered coaching headed next?
I love this question because the answer is simple. The human becomes the center of the AI technology. So unfortunately, a lot of these companies are coming out, and don't get me wrong, we're not hating on chatbots, we're not hating on, automating processes, et cetera, that need automation, but too much of the AI is focused on taking the human out of the equation. The statistic I mentioned earlier, 3 out of 4 customers want to talk to a human. So we need to listen to what the consumer is saying if we want to fortify that relationship long term. So the human becomes the center of AI technology. And the truth is about 80% of folks maybe on this call, but just in general in the contact center industry, plan to invest in greater AI capabilities over the next 2 years. So where are they going to invest? My vision for this is 70-20-10 is fully implemented through augmenting role play with an AI conversation simulator. And Zenerate's leading the market right now. A lot of the metrics that we impact, Andre just threw some of those on the screen, but the reality is you integrate this into your learning model. This does not add to learning. This becomes part of learning. And most people actually see a reduction in learning time. I've seen personally a 20% reduction. And if you do the OpEx expense across 5,000 agents for an entire year, that's big time dollars. So there's opportunities for cost savings as well. And the ROI speaks for itself when you implement this technology. So we go from listening as the core tenet to training to practicing.
All right. Well, that is the end of the formal presentation. Now we want to get into some live Q&A. And as I had mentioned at the onset of the presentation, you have the ability to put any questions in the Q&A. I see that some have put questions in the chat as well. If you do want to audibly ask a question, I could unmute your mic. Just let me know in the chat if you want to speak your question. Or again, you could continue to put your questions in the chat or the Q&A. I'll read just some of the first few questions that we have in the chat here.
Andre, I'll take the first one, actually. So it is from Tanja. How complex can the coaching be? Is it designed to be more the easy wins with small steps and difficulty? That's a great question. It can be as simple or complex as you need it to be as an organization. Casey Hall's nodding her head because, yes, it's true. Like if you want to just do the intro and authentication of a call, boom, put them in, get them mastering that and move on. What I didn't mention is that there's a guided and an unguided version to every story. We call our simulation stories that we produce. And so a guided is like having training wheels on the bike when you're learning how to ride, so you don't keep crashing and just getting so frustrated with the process. So that is the beginning of the learning journey. And then you take the training wheels off, you let them practice unguided. They can prove mastery. And you can actually make each simulation easy, medium, or hard. So they can kind of step through this learning journey that I'm talking through. And then at the end, we have what's called a master story. And this is where I use baseball analogy. So you're going to get up to bat and you don't know what the pitcher's going to throw you. But whether it's a fastball, curveball, slider, changeup, you name it, you need to be ready and prepared to hit that ball, just like you need to be ready and prepared for any conversation that's coming your way, whether it's call type A or call type T, it doesn't matter. You have to prove that you're ready, and you can do that through this technology. I think, will the slides be shared? We can definitely share the slides, Andre. I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah, there's a PDF version. So I see Paul, you requested that. If there are other people who want to, I don't know if you want to send it just to everybody or just to select people. I don't want to, junk up everybody's email inbox if you don't want the slides. But let's do that. If you're interested in getting the slides from the presentation today, just let me know in the chat and I'll have it emailed to you. Okay, so I see you, Paul, you're asking for them. I'll send those to you. Anybody else, just let me know. Let's go to Bill's question next. How do C-level executives utilize Zenerate?
I'm going to let Casey answer that because we worked closely with Marty Sareem, who was the CEO at ERC, and he was the biggest proponent and fan of this technology. So how did Marty use it within the organization?
I think Marty was one of the key stakeholders in vetting the platform and testing out some of the scenarios because, his background, he started off as an agent. Mm-hmm. So he was very concerned about how is this going to impact the agent experience and will this really target the competencies that, again, we're looking to build. So, I think the nice thing is that anyone can go into the platform and take a look at the scenarios and help build out the guided calls. So it depends on where that question is coming from and what type of usage you're looking to deploy at the C-suite level. But I will tell you from ERC's perspective, our C-suite's very involved and passionate about technology. So they always want to do a trial run of any solution before we deploy it.
I love it. And I'll give one specific example of another client. So Bank of America, largest bank in the country, their CEO and board of directors directly engage with Zenerate and asked us for a company-wide issue. They had a big problem and they needed to target improvement in a few different areas. And as a bank, I was at Western Union Financial Services. It is highly regulated. And if you're not in compliance, watch out. Right? Somebody's coming after you. Somebody's going to take your money one way or another. And so for Bank of America, this was a big deal. And I'm not going to go into what the issue was, but they came to Zenerate and said, we need 25 stories and we need them in the next few weeks. And here's the problem we need to address. And we jumped on it. And they were so grateful for what we were able to do. So the CEO of the largest bank in the United States came directly to our CEO and said, hey, Brian, can you help me out here? And I love that story because it just shows the value that this brings, and they're seeing it across all the different verticals, 100,000 plus different associates. So I think in general, what we're seeing in the chat is let's just give the slides out to everybody, Andre. That's what I'm seeing. And then David asked, who can I talk to for a demo? You can reach out to me directly, kcd@zenerate.com. I'm actually the one that does most of the product demos for Zenerate. And then can I speak with someone at ERC for a reference? I think my lovely colleague Casey might be a great reference for you, but I'm sure they have more than just her.
Yes, we do. We'd be happy to field that question. So, Andre, if you could supply contact details.
We will have the last slide that everybody will see will be your contact information. So they will have everything they need to get in contact with both of you.
I love it.
There's another question here. Bill had asked, do any of your clients utilize Zenerate off their system, especially for BPO clients?
What is off? I don't know what he means by off their system, but BPO clients absolutely leverage Zenerate. So Zenerate, just to level set for everybody, it's a cloud-based SaaS platform. So no IT integration required. All you need is a Chrome browser and a headset, and there's no personal or account information. So we're data privacy fortress. I mean, no matter what industry you're in, we got through the rigmarole, let's call it, with Bank of America and a lot of the major banks of the United States. So we are compliant kind of across the board, and we've checked all the boxes there. But you log in just like you would log into your bank account, and you can engage from anywhere in the world. So that's the simple question of that. I think, because I don't understand the rest of it, let's maybe move on to the next one, Andre.
Okay, there's another question here. How will AI Coach support my existing training program for customer service?
That's a great question. I'm going to go back from my experience at Western Union. I brought this in to fill gaps in my existing training program. I knew that I had to go from high facilitator led to high action taken by the agents themselves. Otherwise, we were just going to continue to stink down the line. I mean, we were not good, right? I mean, our metrics were not very good. And this, was killing each interaction with our customers. And it was my job to come in and fix it in a sense. So what we did is we actually integrated the AI coach into the training curriculum. It became, I think I mentioned it earlier, you introduce a topic, you put them in the simulator to practice and reinforce that topic before you advance to the next topic. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure. They need reinforced learning. It's repetition. Zig Ziglar said this, right? Repetition is the mother of all learning. And I will continue to preach that. Again, I'm not a sales guy by nature. You may think I am after this webinar, but I've only been in on this side of the house for 5 or 6 months. I'm a practitioner, a learning professional. I mean, this is what I focused my energy on every day for years. And the reality is you have to get in, do the work, and then get the repetition in order to be successful. So there's so many different ways you can do that. And we can, if you'd like to have a conversation about that offline, I'm more than happy to have that conversation with anybody and talk a little bit more about how we were able to do that successfely.
Yeah.
And
but
Casey, you might have a comment on that.
I guess I would just say work closely with your QA teams who know where there are still gaps to be addressed or where, performance is falling short, especially on your top contact drivers. And I think the key is not trying to boil the ocean, because you do have to build out, again, these scenarios. And so pick the ones that are going to have the most impact. Make sure you leverage your QA team to prioritize accordingly. But, you can't build out every single scenario, and you don't need to. You really just need to focus on the high impact contact drivers and the parts of the call flow that agents are still struggling with. So that would be my 2 cents.
Awesome. Andre, there's a question there for ERC. Let's go to that one.
There's a few questions. I thought this was a really interesting question. Casey, at ERC, do we find that our agents prefer utilizing this technology versus a live person to do a lot of this training?
A role play. So I think they prefer having the ability to run through these scenarios more frequently. I think there is, somewhat of a learning curve for the agent to get on the platform and get familiar with the system. But once they do, and that should happen relatively quickly if you're using it on a daily basis, I think once that learning curve is overcome and they know the platform and they're self-sufficient and they can log in and really focus on the areas that they know they need most personally, then yes, it is preferred. Role plays we still do, but again, it really amplifies the level of support a trainer can provide. It's not replacing that trainer, but it's just making sure that more hands-on experience is given so that they feel like they already know the call and they can make the conversation their own before going into nesting. So hopefully that answered the question.
Oh, totally. Thank you for that, Casey. I was looking through the chat to see if there's any additional. I know a lot of people have been requesting the slides, so like we said, we'll just give it to everybody by PDF. So look out for that. Tanja, it looks like you have one more question here. How many scenarios does the pilot coach cover?
Awesome.
Casey Denby.
Yeah. So if you're engaging, and we do pilots with all of our prospects before we ever sign a production deal, because we are confident enough that you will prove fit. And the whole point is to have a win-win business relationship, right? I don't want to do business with anybody who doesn't want to do business with us and doesn't see a win and a benefit. So we're not going to try and fit square peg through a round hole in that instance. But if you have customer-facing teams, we should talk. Right. I mean, that's just the reality. We can help you in one way or another. There's always a use case. So to answer that, typically in a pilot, we can get through 30 to 40 stories. And you might be surprised that 30 to 40 stories may cover 70, 80% of what you want to get through training. And so you get through this pilot, you have these 30 to 40 stories. And by the way, that's more than enough. I would say about 10 is where you need kind of like a minimum to prove fit. But if you have 30 or 40, I mean, you can run an entire training curriculum off 30 or 40 different stories. Trust me, you can. And these stories are not just 30 seconds long, right? I mean, these are actual conversations. These can last 10, 15 minutes, depending on the particular scenario. It just depends on how complex you want it to be. There's no limit to that on our end, right? It's all about fitting the client needs. So 30 to 40 or so within a pilot, I would say. And then by that time, I mean, you just add what you need when you kind of roll over into production. There's really no change when you transition from pilot to production.
Awesome. Quick question for Casey Hall on ERC side. How fast can we upskill agents at ERC? And then can we support a variety of service use cases?
Yes. So tackle that question in two ways. From an upskilling perspective, I think once you've built out the initial stories, it's very fast. And I had a client ask me this the other day. They're looking to launch a new product and they wanted to go and find ways to quickly alter, the different scenarios to include upselling language. And so, it becomes very easy to do if you've already built out a story and you're just going back and you are, working within that scenario to add that upskilling language. It's very dynamic. And so it's easy to go back and update those modules and quickly deploy that. There is some time to stand it up. I think if, some of our clients who have, a scripted opening and close, but everything else is more of an open-ended, customer-centric call. Of course, we've seen success with the platform as well. It just takes a little bit more time because it's machine learning to learn all the nuances. So it depends what you already have built out and how quickly it is to leverage the platform, to provide upskilling. For us, that's something we hope to do depending on the complexity of the program in a very short time period, because we have clients who give us a matter of days or a week sometimes, to prepare for new product introductions. So, it does vary. I'd be happy to take that question offline and learn a little bit more about your business. But I think the second part of that question is, do we cover a variety of services? Andre, did I get that right?
You got that right.
And yes, so we actually support the end-to-end customer engagement model. So from, onboarding and sales to customer care to retention and recovery, we really do it all. So happy to have a discussion after the call as well today if you have additional questions on ERC.
I would just add to the change request. So typically we can get change requests to an existing story same day. Right? Unless you're maybe sending them on like a Sunday night. But we do support 24/7 in general, but we will get those changes turned around very, very quickly. And if you let us know, like, this is urgent, right? It's a disclosure that has to be read. We have to change it. Boom, we can get it done right then and there without any sweat. So appreciate that. Just want to clarify what quick means. Tanja asked, does it create a new module or replace it? It just kind of it's the same module really, but now you're tweaking it to whatever it's changed to, right? So that would be, I think, the answer to that question.
Okay.
Awesome. These are really good questions.
These are awesome questions.
Yeah. That's great. Bill asked something about reporting. Maybe I'll just touch on this one, and this could be the last question. So we offer, again, every click and utterance inside the platform, we can create a report around. We can do individual reports for, like, let's say Casey Hall is in the system. I want to see all of Casey's simulations, or we can do a classroom report, or we can do a regional report. We can slice and dice it any way the client wants. We have a set of like fixed reports that we produce for everybody because we know they're going to be wanted and needed. But any reporting that you want, you can get. And then we also have customers that ask us about, hey, can we take data and put it into like Tableau or something? The answer is yes.
Yep.
All right, awesome. Well, on the clock here, we have about 10 minutes left. We could take any last minute questions in the chat that you guys have. Just wait a few seconds and see if anybody else has anything else to ask.
I think I just saw one question from Bill around, do we use it in hiring, that I can address? That's actually something that ERC has been looking at. Interesting question.
You should.
Yeah. And so, making sure, obviously it would be a simple call flow customer engagement scenario, but it's a great assessment tool perhaps to integrate into the front end recruiting process. And so it's something that we are currently vetting and looking for ways to implement it. So more to come there, but it's a great question because I do see the value in using it at the front end for certain lines of business and roles. So
I would just say, like, to add to that, if you're hiring somebody for a customer service job and they have zero communication skills, you're going to identify that through a simulated practice. Let's say it becomes step 2 or step 3 of the hiring practice. You put them in a guided story, the guided simulation. It's a very basic, maybe it's 2 minutes long. That's all you need. And it tells them, hey, Andre, greet me as a customer and ask me how my day is. And then it would tell them after they speak, and then it would ask them, okay, so now authenticate the customer through this, or build rapport by doing this. It'll tell you kind of what to do. And if they just have zero communication game, right, maybe they're not the right fit. And you set your own kind of hiring standards, of course. But as a BPO, somebody who's representing many clients, it's really important that you bring on the right people, because not only does it hit that 90% of people that talk to a call center agent, I mean, that's a big deal. It either reinforces loyalty or it does the quite opposite. But it also gives you guys the opportunity to save by not wasting money on somebody in training that's never going to cut it.
That's right. Another really good question just came in. When the employees sign into the platform for training off hours, do they get paid?
Yes, usually. I mean, for our programs, anytime that they're leveraging this in training, it's within the scope of their day. So, right. I don't think we haven't seen yet too many agents going in after hours and taking the practice courses. Not that they can't, but I think for the most part, any training is covered under our agreements.
Yep.
All very good questions from the group.
Why don't we just show contact info on the last slide, Andre? So
we'll show the last slide here with all the contact information. So we do thank everybody for attending today. We had mentioned we'll send out the slide decks to you guys, so you'll have those. If you have any questions or you want a demo in person, please reach out to either Casey, and we'd be happy to work with you. Again, much appreciated, and I want you guys to have a great rest of your week. All right, and take care.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.